Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our weekend edition of Hebrew Word Study. And this today, I came across a verse that just stuck with me, and thought I would share it as I had to do a little bit of personal study just to satisfy my own self. And so, where we begin today is in Acts chapter 23, verse 1. And this is just the first six verses here are or first five verses are just very strange to me. You see it on the screen. I'm trying to picture this situation of where Paul was. He's before the council. He's in Jerusalem. It says the high priest Ananias. Oh, first he makes this comment. He says, "I have lived in good conscience before God until this day," which obviously upset the high priest Ananias. And he told one of the soldiers or whoever was there to smite him on the mouth, to smack him in the face, whether this was a slap of the hand or a punch of the knuckles. Obviously, this was harmful. This hurt. And Paul, verse 3, retorts with some very strong language. God smite thee, whited wall. You sit to judge me after the law, and then you command me to be smitten contrary to the law. So he knew this was somebody important. He knew it was a judge. And of course, somebody right then, they're all aghast and speaks up in verse 4, you know, well, do you know who you're talking to? You're talking to God's high priest, um, the highest one, if you will. I was thinking of the Hebrew here. It's Kohen Gadol, which is God's high priest. And then Paul, backs off a little bit and said, "Oh, I didn't know that he was the high priest. I thought he was just a regular guy or a judge or somebody of a lower status." And then he quotes a verse. And of course, whenever I see Old Testament or Hebrew Bible verses being quoted in the apostolic writings or New Testament, it causes me to want to go look it up. So, as you notice here, it says, "Thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people." So went back and just tried to see what was going on. Why didn't Paul know that the high priest was there? There is some tradition that says that Paul's eyesight was maybe diminished. We get that indication from one of the other um, epistles where it says if I think to the Galatians that they would have plucked their very eyes out for him. Leads us to believe that Paul maybe had some issue with eyesight. He was very nearsighted, could read close, but could not see things far away. I'm going to go with that and accept that, and that helps me put this in a context that I can deal with. So that's not the point of this lesson, but it's the point of what is he quoting here and who is he speaking to and what does he mean? So first thing we want to do is go to where this is found, and it is found in Exodus chapter 22, verse 28. And the Hebrew says, Elohim lo tekalel, you shall not revile, and God you shall not revile. It uses the word Elohim. And Venasi va'amaka lo ta'or, and the ruler of your people you shall not curse. So again, uh, going back to, who is he talking about? And what is this making reference to? Because he doesn't quote the first part, he quotes the second part. And so that's what we want to just take a look at. So what I did was I went to one of my Hebrew Bibles, and here we come across this is in an Art Scroll version of an interlinear, and you can see that I have it kind of highlighted. I'm going to just drop it down a little bit so you can see the verse here. And I was quite surprised when I saw that it was translated, "A judge you shall not curse, and a leader among your people you shall not curse." And noticing here that the word is still Elohim, matches exactly what's in the Bible Hub, word for word. All the Hebrew is the same, but that they had translated as judge, and rather than God. I do or am aware of instances where the word Elohim is used in the Bible to describe distinguished people, people of renown, people who are in charge of things. So I scroll down in my Hebrew Bible here, and it has a footnote, and it says that the sages derive the word Elohim in this verse to refer to judges as well as to God. Thus, although it is forbidden to curse anyone, interesting for them to bring that out, the Torah singles out judges and leaders because their responsibility to render decisions and enforce judgment makes them targets of the imprecations of those against whom they rule. Um, this is kind of what started me off on this because obviously the news is filled with many things of people speaking many ways about leadership. Our society has really lost the respect for those in authority. Pick any branch of authority, and they are under attack by society and marginalized, minimized. They are not respected the way they should be. And here, talking about leadership, judges and leaders among the people, you shall not curse. So again, these terms of cursing, and it's used twice here, cursing, but you can see that it's a different word. And the Bible Hub has first one is you shall revile, and the ruler of your people you shall not curse. So this is kind of what started me on this pathway here as to, what is going on. I wanted to take a look at the Hebrew version of the book of Acts to see how they render this verse. And so what we see here is manuscript 131 um, of the Hebrew New Testament. This is somewhat of unknown origin. It was penned back in the, I believe, 1600s, but obviously they didn't create it then. It was copied from something. And so, the antiquity trail is somewhat lost. But what I want to point out is that it is kind of saying the same thing. Here is verse 5 that someone had put in you know, basic English numbering system, and it says Vayomar and Paulos. So this is Paul saying, "Lo yada'ati, I did not know, ki sar is the word for prince or ruler, um, uh, Kohanim, which is the high priest, ruler of the people, and then who, meaning he didn't know he was the ruler of the people. Basically, same thing it said in um, the English version, and then it says ki niktav, and it is written. Okay, we get that. But what we want to look for here is the next words. Vanasim ka mecha lo ta'ur. And you'll see here that the word that I'm circling with my cursor is the same word that's here, spelled exactly the same way, vowel pointed the same way. Mecca is circling here. It's exactly the way in the Hebrew Bible. It has lo, and then ta'ur is a little different. It has the holum over the aleph, which would mean there's um, a defective vav there, which is quite common that they just try to save space. But here we have it pointed as a shirt, which again, the same meaning. So we see and feel pretty good that this Hebrew copy of MS 131 obviously is true to the Masoretic text. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. Want to point that out to you. But another thing that was noted in one of my Hebrew texts is a um, comparison or a support by what is called the oral tradition. And the oral traditions are obviously something that Jesus was somewhat negative against in many ways because they are voluminous in what they talk about. But there are many times when he quoted from them. So again, when you eat chicken, you eat the meat and leave the bones. And so kind of use that philosophy here with many things that we study. You're rarely going to find a document that you will feel totally in alignment with, but there are always things you can learn. And so looking here at Sepharia, which has the oral tradition in written form that we can study today. And it is Sanhedrin 66a, and it starts with verse 12, and it says, "You shall not blaspheme judges nor curse the king of your people." And it references the Exodus 22 and 27. And this whole thing here of talking about judges being Elohim, same as the ruler of the people, using the same word as they do for God. And again, just a reminder that, Hebrew is a language that has about 7,500 words in it in what's called classical or biblical Hebrew. And so the words have many different meanings, and you have to use the context to decide basically who's being talked about. And so I find that kind of interesting that they use understanding of the word judges here. If we go back to this interlinear and we look at the parallel Bibles, it will uh, mainly apply the word God here to Elohim. You see all the different translations of the Bible, and they pretty much use God, except the Aramaic Bible, which is translated from the Aramaic language, which was the common language of the people at the time of Jesus, so it's used as a way to find out how they understood it. And interesting to see that they have the word judge in here. Um, and so as we continue down, most of them stay with the word Elohim being translated as God. Webster's Bible translation is quite interesting. It uses the little g and plural, meaning gods. Don't know if I agree with that, but interesting that that is here. So as we continue to look at this, let's just take a quick look at what these words cursing and revile. I struggle with these pretty much along the same manner as when the Bible says that they were blessed or that they conferred blessing. Um, Cursing is obviously on the opposite end of the scale, but it's something that, we, at least I struggle with trying to understand, what does this mean? What happens in a physical realm? What happens in a spiritual realm when this words or this implication is given to either bless or to curse? So we look up this H7043. It talks about that the root word is kalal. And for those of you who are studying Hebrew, you will realize that it sounds a lot like the word kal, which is used to help memorize the verb conjugations, and it comes from a meaning of to be light. Well, kalal here is on that same root, and it talks about being slight or swift or trifling. So it means to minimize something. You look at where it was used in the Bible, Genesis, even from when God is creating and separating the waters are minimized from the earth. So you kind of get the idea that a curse is a marginalizing, minimizing, dragging something down, changing it from something that's important to something that's less important. And again, lots of understanding here with to be slight, swift, trifling, dishonoring, to make small. So you get the impression, you're minimizing something, at least here for this verse. So you should not minimize Elohim. You should not minimize a judge. And it is in the PL form. So it's a very intense. It is something that's a very strongly pointed admonition. Do not do this. But then the second part is the one that Paul quoted here. And so he says, and a ruler of your people, it uses the word ta'or, to curse. So that's the next one we're going to look up here. We unpack this, and it comes from the word to curse. Well, that doesn't really help us very much. Always translated pretty much as cursed. Okay, but what does it mean to curse? And Brown Driver Briggs doesn't help us. They pretty much assume everybody knows what a curse is. And well, okay, maybe I do. Back here in 2024 in Midwestern United States, in the United States of America, does curse mean something different to me and my culture than it would in the Hebrew culture 2,000 years ago or over 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago when Exodus was penned. So in order to just take this a little step further, we go to the Dictionary of the Targumim, which is Marcus Jastro's, and here we see the word Aleph, resh, and it talks about this word meaning to break through, to make holes in, to make into a mesh. Obviously, you punch enough holes in something, it becomes a mesh. To point out, to set outside, to dig, to stab. Um, it's just very interesting how it gives me a little bit more of words to think of. You have the ink and the color of water. You are changing and watering it down. You're reducing the value of it. And the word cursed again takes on a different meaning here when it's to be speak derogatorily is how I would translate it today. In my understanding, it helps me put it in something that I can deal with here, that to speak in derogatory words. So you shouldn't speak in derogatory words a ruler of your people. And again, this just gives me a lot of food for thought here because our society, as you know, is just gone in a really bad way when it comes to how things are spoken about, how people in authority are spoken about. And it's, I guess, refreshing for me to find that God's ways are still here for us to follow. We have control over the things we say. We have control over the emotions that we let loose. And the Jewish culture is so rich in its ability to talk about what it calls the sins of the tongue, or the evil tongue, the lashon hara, versus a lashon being tongue, and hara being evil, versus a lashon tov, which is a good tongue. And there are books written. Kofetz Chaim is a book written, uh, and all they talk about are how to talk, what to say under circumstances, how not to allow yourself to have an evil tongue, even so much as to even having a conversation with someone where you're provoking them, where you bait them or say something to get them riled up to speak negatively. Jewish culture says you shouldn't do this. You rob a person of their joy. You rob a person of peace. You rob them of their happiness when you speak about things that are derogatory, and you cause others to speak about things that are negative and derogatory. And I look at this and say, wow, I got quite a lot of learning to do. Our society surely needs this. We as Christians, as people of God, surely need this, and not to be heavily influenced in the wrong way by our society, and go back to God's word and follow the words of Paul here, where he was, smacked in the face by someone in authority. He retorted back, not realizing who he was speaking to, and immediately apologized, immediately said, I was wrong because I know what the word of God says, and I'm gonna align my life with that, and I'm gonna let my mouth reflect what my beliefs are in a way that makes me a good example, gives me favor with God and with the people. So, with that lengthy, interesting lesson, I'm going to leave you for this weekend, and pray God's blessing upon you, and see you next time. Bye bye.